franchise management, marketing adjustments, and the debt yield. You'll put those in there as well, in here. So if you look at this, it's really getting constrained more by cash flow than anything else. And we're going to go look at that and figure out why. We're going to go to the cash. We'll go to look at the cash flows, and then we're going to go and we'll talk about the slide. So on the homework, so down the left side, remember we went through the anatomy of the cash flow? It looks exactly like this. I'm just going down, columns C, D, and E. I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to give you all these numbers. You're going to use the model. You're going to pop them in. I didn't give you dates. I just called it T12. It'll be prior year 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll give you 4 years. We'll take a look. And you'll throw that into the model. Instead of saying 2004, you'll put like prior year 3. So it's done in 2007. And you'll put in the number of rooms. It automatically is going to count the occupied rooms, which just takes that times 365, which is the total available rooms. This is the ADR, which you'll plug in from the historical, the occupancy, and it automatically calculates the RevPAR. What I'm looking at in this top section, really for any of the line items, is I like to see sort of smooth up, in a perfect world, I'd like to see a smooth upward transition of RevPAR and cash flows and expenses. Because that means, okay, it's stabilized, it has a normalized growth rate. When revenue is here 1 year and it drops, and then it goes back up and it drops further, and there's a lot of volatility, then we need to understand why. And so I'm looking at this, let's look at the lineup. So for ADR, it goes from 105 to 112 to 127 to 132, and we underwrote 132. The 2007, I think given the timing, the 2007 was a full trend as well. We didn't need to have a prior year 1 and a T12. Now you can make an argument like that's a little bit aggressive given the growth trajectory. Is that sustainable? We need to look and see, okay, what does the new supply look? Was there a unique catalyst for a couple of years? Meaning, was it a special event? Was there a huge concert that pushed it up 1 year, and then the Super Bowl was there the next year, and then neither one of those are happening for the next 5 or 10 years? Or is this property just well located next to a convention center that it is just constantly full, and it's in walking distance, and this property is going to just continue to do well enough if we take care of it? So you need to understand the demand generators of why do people want to stay at this hotel? When you think about booking a hotel, it's usually about sort of location and price point. Where do you want to stay and how much do you want to spend? And what's the nicest hotel that fits that criteria? Or the most fun or coolest hotel that fits the criteria? The next thing I'm going to look at is occupancy. And so we're going from 69 to 72, then it drops down to 69, goes back to 70, and so we underwrote 70. The occupancy is pretty flat. And so you look at this number here is the change in RevPAR year over year. So from 04 to 05 was 13% jump. From 05 to 06 was 8, and 6 to 7 was 5. And we're going to look at all these metrics and compare them to the market. But it's on I think where it was underwritten occupancy is perfectly fine, and it's on the aggressive end for ADR. Everybody with me? Kind of general analysis, looking for volatility, looking for things that are stable. When you do the homework, I'm going to want you to put a note here, like T12, and I'm really we're talking about like 5 or 6 characters, like, average, sort of like, last, 2 years, whatever you did. If you need to give more explanation, you can come to the bottom and say, if there was a lot of volatility, it was hard to figure out, so I took an average of the last 4 years, or couldn't figure it out, so I just underwrote the lowest ADR number in the last 3 years. And so when I say I want to know, I don't care about the number, I want to know your thoughts. We're looking for the thoughts here. So for the homework, you're going to do this for every line item. You don't always have to have an explanation at the bottom, but if it just says T12, that's fine. But if you think if the T12 is the highest by a long shot, you should have a further explanation about why you got comfortable using the T12 and didn't take an average. And again, if you have a logical explanation, you'll get full credit. This is not sort of, well, I would have done it this way. I want to know if you're getting the concept. Yeah.
So when you underwrite, you put 2 years average, but this is just an example?
Yeah, it's just an example.
Okay.
Just shorthand, you can abbreviate. I just want to know what number you picked.
Okay.
Yeah? Was that the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, all right. I'll be here. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing for room revenue and for food and beverage and telephone and the other operating departments, where I'm looking for consistency. So we have a big jump here from, call it 8 million to 9 million, from 9 million to, I'll say almost 10 million, and then it goes a little bit over 10 million. You can tell that the ADR spiking, which causes the revenue to spike with it. You want to understand why. Yeah.
Yeah, the underwriting column in that spreadsheet, should we think of that more as like, you're trying to normalize historicals, so like come up with like a normalized T12 that fits within your guidelines, or is it more like the lender's conservative estimate of, year one projection?
Definitely not projections.
Okay.
So, lenders, I always use the car analogy. We're looking in the rearview mirror, not out the windshield.
Okay,
So we're looking historically where we think it's going to continue to perform during the next 10 years.
Gotcha.
Right? So we're not going to underwrite, okay, I hope it outperforms historicals, right? Because then it just makes the loan safer and easy to get a refi at maturity. But I'm not going to assume that happens because as lenders, we don't get paid anymore.
Right.
If the property outperforms. The equity does,
So
which is fine.
basically it's like any expense line item has been going up, let's say perfectly by 3%, and you think it will next year, your underwriting column will just have, let's say, the last years.
Yes, 100%. Yes. So, are you guys getting the flavor for smoothness of cash flows, explaining volatility? And again, remember we talked about, making sure that the bulk of the revenue is coming from hotel rooms and not from F&B, finance a hotel, or we're financing a restaurant and club. Because there's some that will do that, where the hotels it's the inverse, where the F&B is like 65%, and the hotel rooms are like 35%. You notice it's roughly about around 65%. And we underwrote in line with that. We're going to look at the same thing with expenses. Our expenses sort of growing with it. Like if the room revenue is going up, the room expenses are going down. That doesn't work. That should be this can't be right. Because if you have to clean more rooms, then you're going to have more room expense. So I'm just giving you sort of a little bit of a Captain Obvious look as you're looking at the room expense. it should be going up at at a similar type pace. Because if the room expense, revenues are going up and it's staying flat or down, there's something off. Same thing for F&B, telephone. And so then we get to a relation for gross payments, the departmental income. And I'm gonna do the same thing with every line item. Every line item, yeah.
I just wanted to clarify a little bit more. If there is like a 3% growth every year in rental,
Yeah.
you always assume, you're never gonna go above that final year,
Correct.
even if it's a smooth line.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at the T12 and I'll give them the highest number out of the T12 I can possibly get for revenue.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna take that T12 revenue and then grow it by 3% and underwrite that number. We used to do that. A lot of the things are a little bit more aggressive. But that is not the correct way to do it. That's why I got a lot of defaults. Yeah.
But then if that's the case, what happens in an event like, for example, this is almost 07, right? So like, you didn't know that there was a recession coming the following year, but I'm trying to understand, like, for example, like right now when people say a recession might come in next year or the year after, and if I try to go get a loan, will they consider, the capital markets while underwriting for like 2020?
If they're willing to write loans, they're not going to assume that a recession is going to happen tomorrow. If you did that, first of all, nobody knows. I got out of the prediction business, I thought it would already happen. Clearly, I don't know anything, right? I've been doing this a long time. But you will look at, what lenders will do is they'll look at their book, meaning, okay, what does my book of loans look like? How much of the percentage is hotel, right? How much hotel exposure do I want to have? If I'm okay having 10 or 15%, I only have 5 or 10% of the exposure, I'm going to be fine. If I have more than I like, more than I want, or I'm at my capacity, I may bid it to lose it, right? Or if it's a strong client, I may just have to, lean in, because, clients are very fickle. When the second you don't show up for them, they're gonna, go somewhere else, and then the next thing, then you've lost them. Sometimes it's binary, and you're just like, I can't go above a certain threshold of hotels. But that's how they would look at it. And if they really thought a recession was imminent, that spreadsheet that I gave you, the Excel, the LTVs would drop, the coverages would go up, the debt yields would go up, and it would just be, that's why what I call bid to lose. We're in the market, we're quoting, but we're not meeting the market, because we really don't want to win. Yeah.
So the point is, all the numbers are historical numbers. There's no single number that is the projection, right?
No, these are all
All
historical
are
numbers.
historical. And we never project any numbers.
For this class, no. This is from a lending perspective. So we're looking to the past, and hopefully the very, very recent past.
Yeah.
But if we look at the projections, and they don't pan out, we underwrote it off of growth, like in year 3 of the projection, then it doesn't pan out, then we could end up with a defaulted loan.
So if you just scroll to the top of, for the purchase price that the borrower is telling you, are you just fiddling with the cap rate until you get the cost basis that they tell you they're buying the asset for?
Say that last question again.
Because, so the cost basis, is that what the borrower is buying the, whatever it might be for, at say 100%?
Yeah.
Okay, so wouldn't it be simpler if that was just the input and then just backed in the cap rate? Because they say we're buying it
You give
for.
you a goal, see, it doesn't matter. You're
Okay.
gonna get the same price. But yeah, I potentially overcomplicated it.
Yeah.
In the case that we're doing homework, it's like T12 is significantly lower than previous year 1. So when we're doing our underwriting column, can we project that like it continues to fall for being more conservative?
No, I would just use the data set that I gave you.
Okay, so no.
So I would not, what I would do is we say, you know what, I don't know, in that note at the bottom, I don't know if it's gonna continue to fall, so I underwrote to a lower LTV or to a higher debt yield. So maybe you said, okay, I can underwrite to an 11, I'm gonna underwrite to 12, if it's 12, I'm gonna go to a 13, or I'm gonna underwrite to a 1.5 debt service coverage. Because I don't know. Versus projecting and using the actual metrics. Yes?
If borrowers are getting fixed rates, is that before they put a deposit down? And are you guys as lenders just doing like a quick and dirty underwriting, or?
Yeah. Yes to all the above. So they're not gonna put a deposit up until, usually that loan app is fairly negotiated, highly negotiated. Because the borrower wants to know, are you really gonna be here when I need you to close? And then lender wouldn't ask for the deposit until it was executed. You don't have to put the deposit up and then start negotiating. Yeah. So another hand? Yes.
For this case, you just use the different years, not the T12, right?
Yeah, so because it was done in December, I think, 2007, what functioned as the T12. Because that was, the prior year one, it was the T12. Occasionally that happens depending on what month you fall at. So it happens if you funded in December or January and you have prior year one, you've got your prior year one is your T12.
But if it happens not in the January or December, it's in the June or in the middle of the year, how do you do?
So you'll get the monthly cash flows, and then you'll piece it together from, say, September through August. Just using today, we're in October. Okay, so September of 2018 through August of 2019. So when you see that in this moniker would say like T12, 8/19, that means it's just through August of 19. So a couple things. Let's talk about trigger events, franchise agreements. You need to know this. The reason you have a franchise agreement, and I'm going to go back to sizing the cash flows, is that the franchise agreement is a flat. It's Hilton, it's Starwood, it's Marriott, and what you're getting for that is a national reservation system. So if you're a hotel owner operator, it helps you put quote unquote heads on beds. You want to keep your occupancy up as high as you can. That is why you pay the franchise fee. So what happens if the franchise agreement, which is usually a 10 or 15 year agreement, expires in the middle of the long term? Do we do the loan? Very quiet.
No.
That could be an answer.
The same assumptions.
There are ways to structure around it. So with this is going to go into when we're going to talk about PIPs. Are you guys familiar with what a PIP is? PIP is a property improvement program. So all of the franchisors, the Hiltons, the Hyatts, the Marriotts of the world, have brand standards. So if you want to operate a courtyard, for instance, you have to build it and operate it to certain specs, and those specs are always being upgraded, to certain types of TVs, to certain, vanities, to certain paint and carpet. So when you walk into a courtyard in Nashville, it looks the same as the one in Houston, even though there's two different owners. So what happens if you can do one of two things for the franchise agreement if it expires during the long term. This is assuming that you like all the metrics, right? You can use it as a way to back out of the loan if you want. Is that if you're a lender and you're doing hotel loans, you have people that you can lean on to, okay, if the franchise expired, what is the scope of work that is going to be required for this property to be upgraded? You're not going to go to the franchisor, not going to go to Hilton or Marriott today, because they're going to give you a ridiculously long list. And it's going to be kind of punitive. So what the franchisor will do is they don't give you costs they tell you this is the scope of work, and then you will have your engineer cost it out. And then you'll figure out, okay, they're gonna have to put in $1 million, making up a number, could be 10 million, depending on the size of the hotel. And the last time it was upgraded. And so we can reserve from, if you remember, excess cash flow, which is, this is the debt service amount, this is what we're underwriting, this is the debt service, this is what's left over. We can take it from excess cash flow, or we can do an upfront reserve. The other way to do it is to trap 12 or 18 months of excess cash flow, even if you don't know the amount in advance, and make extending the flag an event of default if they don't, so the borrower will lose all their equity. Yes?
Can you just remind us what upfront to do?
Yeah, so when you fund the loan, when you're looking at your sources and uses, you'll have, the sources will be the loan amount, right? But then you'll also have, some of the uses of those loan proceeds will be a special reserve for the projected PIP. PIP is a property improvement program. It's very common for the franchise to expire during the loan term. You deal with it all the time. If you're writing a 10-year loan and the franchise agreements are typically 10 or 15 years, unless you're catching it right at the beginning, you're typically going to have to deal with the franchise agreement expiration. But you do want to make sure that as you're looking at the new supply, that this isn't an old and tired one and a shinier new one is going to go up in a better location, in which case you may not be able to renew the flag. Yeah.
Sorry, can you go for the second alternative you have, the one about making the loss of the franchise agreement default then?
Yeah, so say you don't know what the scope is, right? So you're trying to get the scope, and you don't know what the scope is going to be. You can escrow 12 to 18 months of excess cash flow prior to the franchise agreement expiration date. And if that money is not enough, the borrower's going to have to come out of pocket to do the renovations. And if they don't do that and get it extended, then the loan becomes recourse. It's a very strong incentive. Because usually the borrower goes, of course they're going to renew it, but I'm their top, operator in this region, and it's like, okay. Whatever reason they don't, because if it expires in year 5, who knows what happens in 5 years? Yes?
Is switching flags also an alternative?
Yes, but not for this class or this loan, because then you would be into a bridge loan. You'd be talking about changing the profile of the asset. And so it would no longer be stable. But yeah, I mean, it's a different type of loan structure. Yes?
Do the PIPs typically or always occur when the franchise agreement ends, when it expires? Okay.
Yeah, it's because you have to upgrade to the new brand standard. And there's usually some negotiation, because the brands want to make everything look amazing, and at some point the owner and the operators go, that's great, but I'll be broke. Because it's just not financial, there's no return on cost for me. Looks great for you, but after I pay you the franchise fee, I've got a negative out. I'm just making a scenario where it's just, I can't ever recoup my costs. So there's no return on equity. So there's usually a little bit of a negotiation there between the franchisee and the franchisor. So one of the other things you need to know about hotels is they are by nature volatile. And what we're looking at is an annual cash flow. But when you do the underwriting, you really need to look at it on a monthly basis. So, for example, if you have, hotels in the Caribbean, there are peak months, there are shoulder months, and there are down months. And in the down months, you may not be able to cover debt service. So what you'll do as an underwriter is all of the categories on the left will stay the same, but you're going to look at it instead of an annual basis on a monthly basis. And you're going to be focused on positive debt service coverage. So if there are months where there's negative debt service coverage, where it's like at a 1.0, you're going to want to take a reserve. What you typically do is you figure out, you're going to look at this over a 2 or 3 year period, because this is a stabilized asset, it's been around for a while, so it means it's been around for at least 3 years, is that you're going to average the shortfalls over the last 3 years, and then you're going to take a seasonality reserve either upfront or ongoing during the peak months. You need to know that. Should I explain that again? Yes? Because hotels are really an operating business, and they can be volatile. So if you're in a seasonal resort, whether you're at the beach or you're in the mountains, you're going to have months where you're 100% occupied, and you're going to have months where you may only be like 30% occupied. And shoulder months where maybe you're like 50 to 70% occupied. And so what you're going to do as an underwriter, because this is a stabilized loan, there's history, you're going to look at the monthly cash flows over the last 3 years, at least the last 2 years, to figure out, which months do I have negative debt service coverage? And so you can figure out what is the shortfall for each one of those months. And then you're going to set up a seasonality reserve by adding all that up for year 1, add it up for year 2. If it's about the same, you'll take the higher one. If it's volatile, if it belongs more than the other, maybe take an average, you take the biggest one. And then whatever that shortfall is, let's just say that adds up to, so our annual debt service is $1.6 million, right? Well, let's just say that we're going to have, it's a resort in the Caribbean, and in the winter months, or the down months, we're going to have like a $500,000 shortfall to cover debt service. So we will, in the peak months, we'll reserve that at a cash flow, and we'll put it into a special escrow account that the borrower that can then use during the down months to pay debt service. You do need to know seasonality reserve.
All this reserve came out of the cash flow, right?
Yeah. I usually take it out of cash flow because borrowers don't like upfront reserves, which means they have to come up with more equity, right? And if you try to put it into the FF&E, it's going to lower your underwritten cash flow and lower your proceeds. So it's better for the lender to do it up front, but it's more palatable for the borrower to do it out of cash flow.
And we do that in the Excel, in the escrow way, just like the CapEx reserve, right?
So
It's kind of similar to the CapEx reserve account.
Yeah.
The escrow, right?
Yeah. It's a special escrow.
Okay.
Yes.
And they only need to reserve for months that are negative as opposed to below the minimum threshold of debt service coverage ratio.
It's always a debate. At a minimum, you're taking a shortfall. You would like to have the coverage every month. But yeah, good question. Okay. So let's talk about loan sizing. I just want to orient you here. This is our underwritten column. When you get the model, everything that's in yellow, you're gonna put a 0, you're gonna say delete. And you're gonna fill this in. So let's pretend that we did that, and this is the cash flow that we came up with. So this number here is our underwritten net cash flow. By the way, this should be 5. For the guidelines. So this is our underwritten net cash flow number. We're going to take that number and we're going to size it a few different ways. I'm sorry for flipping up and back, but this is kind of the way the model is laid out. So for the debt yield, we're gonna take our underwritten cash flow of 2.3 million, and we're gonna divide it by the debt yield. And that comes up with a number of 21,145. We're gonna take that same 2.3 million, we're gonna divide it by the loan constant, and then divide it by the minimum coverage to come up with a loan amount constrained by DSCR only. I'm gonna stop there for a second. Everybody understand what I'm doing? So in order to figure out how much are we gonna, now we've covered our cash flow, what does that mean? How much money can we lend? How do I use that $2.3 million of cash, underwritten cash flow, and translate that into a loan amount? There's 3 different ways. There's 4, but we're gonna focus on 3. One is debt yield. You take that 2.3 million and you divide it by the debt yield, which is this number. That number is a plug, you're gonna plug that in from the spreadsheet. So if you remember when we were talking about the minimum debt yield for full or limited service, I think it's 11 or 12. It's 11 for full, 12 for limited service. This is a full service hotel, so we used 11. So that comes up with a loan amount based on debt yield. We're going to come up with a loan amount based on DSCR, which is the debt service coverage ratio, our minimum. So our minimum for full service hotels, which you're going to plug into the model, is 1.35. The calculation takes that same 2.3 million of cash flow, 2.326, divides it by the loan constant, and then it divides it by the DSCR. And it comes up with 23.4 million. Yes,
So you're using net cash flow, right? Not NOI.
correct. It's after reserves. Different than value. Value is off of NOI. But NOI on hotels usually have an FFA component to it when the appraiser does their valuation. TIs and LCs are left out of valuation, typically, on commercial assets. You take it off the NOI. Everybody understand how we got to 2 different loan amounts? These 2? It's important. You're going to have like 6 or 7 of these questions on your test. The other is maximum loan to cost. I'm sorry, loan to value. So you're taking the value here and you're just multiplying it by 75%. More often than not, you're going to be constrained, I'd say 80 to 90% of the time, by debt yield.